Welcome to another episode of Culinary School Stories, the weekly podcast that is dedicated to sharing the stories of people around the globe whose lives have been influenced, impacted, touched, and or enriched, for good or for bad, from their culinary school experience. Hi, my name is Colin Roche, and I'm your host. Thanks for joining us today. You are an important part of this show, where we ask the question, what's your culinary school story? So now, without any further delay, let's meet today's guest. Hello, everyone. Thanks for listening in today to another episode of the Culinary School Stories podcast, a proud member of the Food Media Network. My guest today is Joseph Keefer. And Joseph, I want to start right out by saying welcome and thank you for joining us today and sharing your culinary school story.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and so I know we have a lot to talk about, but let's start at the beginning. How did your love of food and cooking start? And then when did you first realize that you wanted to go to culinary school?
Oh, man, cooking has always been, it's like everyone has a very similar story or they don't. It's, you either picking peas with your grandma on the kitchen floor or you microwaved food for so long as a teenager that you learned to cook. Dinner time for my family was the time for us to sit down and catch up on the day. And, we're quick eaters. We didn't take as long as we should have sometimes, but we sit there and we talk about our days, hash things out. My dad was a firefighter for 30-something years. He'd tell us all these war stories. My mom had assorted jobs over the years. She volunteered a lot through our schools and stuff, especially in the cafeteria. And so that slowly but surely the seeds were planted. When I was a kid, my dad and I we lived on my grandpa's property for a while, and we had our own little garden and stuff like that. So the seeds were planted at an early age. I had a home ec class in middle school, and I was like, oh, I'm good at this. I was on the news team. I thought that was cool. I tried drama, art class. Cooking worked for me. It made sense to me. And then there was a high school in the neighborhood. There was a technical school. They had a culinary program. You had to submit a biography and a portfolio and everything. I did that, got in, studied, basically serve safe for like 4 years.
Wow.
Is basically what it was. It was awesome. We had like a multi-million-dollar kitchen in this high school. We had our own little bistro, like some of the high schools, technical schools do. And then that was the first time I met Chef Barber. He came, he was touring. Is he still with Johnson Wales?
Yeah. So he was out doing for something for admissions?
Yeah.
Visiting the schools?
So, and then I was like, whoa, look at this dude. Look at his uniform, And it was that or CIA, and you know how that goes. Like it's a battle of affordable versus reputable, and Johnson and Wales. And then so then I got accepted, and I ended up going down to North Miami. It was the closest one. Did
you check out any other culinary schools before you picked? Or you just said, "This is it, I'm going"?
I said it's going to be Johnson and Wales, or it's going to be CIA. And that's it. And I was kind of like, and I was still really young, and I didn't want to travel too far away. I'd never, I used to take the Amtrak from Miami to Tampa to go see my family. And that was traveling for me. That was insane. I had never done that before. And so it was a good way to kind of start spreading the growth and beginning my adventure. So
sure. So you said your dad's a fireman. Is he a good cook? Because I know a lot of those firemen spend a lot of time in the kitchens.
It's so funny. It was like, my mom was a big cook growing up. She did all the Italian food, the classics. She had like her mom's recipe for stuffing, or for, turkey stuff dressing that she has been using. It was stay up late at night the night before and do it. And then my dad, as I started cooking, he started kind of getting in there more. And then once I moved away from home and went to school, man, he sends me photos all the time. He's a pretty good cook. He used to cook for the guys at the station. He'd come in and they'd do all their chores and he'd set up. Yeah, he's pretty good. And he loves to learn, he loves to try new things. And like my whole family is great. They listen, sometimes I'm like, hey, I know this is going to be a weird thing, but trust me, it's going to be delicious. And then they eat it and they're like, wow, food's amazing. I'm like, I love it. Great.
So you went to campus, so your first time. What was going through your mind when you get to campus? Are you excited? You're nervous? You're thinking like, this is for me? Or, oh, maybe I made a mistake? What's happening?
I was so convinced, like I am today, that this is just what I was going to do. And I was nervous, but I was ready. It was like, I was like, I'm going to be going, into college for this. I'm going to be focused, head down. We're going to go. And I was nervous, but I mean, this was it. This was the beginning. This was, if I was going to, do this, I had to do it. And I was really excited to get down there and move in. And, I had local family in Miami, super great cook, super Italian guy, shout out to Aunt Trish, she's, but yeah. And so I was thrilled, and I couldn't wait to get into the labs. I was like, academic classes. Yeah, whatever, get me in there.
What was your first lab?
My first lab was fundamentals with LaCostra.
How was that?
The man, the myth, the legend. I love that dude. He is one of the coolest guys. It was great. I'll never forget waking up at 5 a.m. I didn't have a French press, so I used like a quart container, and I made coffee, and I strained it through a coffee filter. It was terrible. It was super weak. I hadn't even had a beverage class yet. I was like in the labs early. I was studying. I was ready to go. I was super nervous. Everything's pressed, shoes polished, and it was great. He was a cool dude, and I was like, wow, this guy, like, he has something to teach, and I have to absorb this. And I failed my first practical. I was ambitious. I was super ambitious, and I failed. I tried to do a chicken Kiev, and I lost points because there was no butter on the inside. So no sauce on the plate there, but it was cool, man. It was great. It was an awesome first class.
How was the feedback on that first practical?
It was so real. It was like, I see what you did, and I see that you tried something. You didn't hit the marks, but it was kind of like, I'm giving you this grade, but I got a high five under the table, and so it was 100%. And it was like, and I was so afraid to fail at anything, and when I was, we all struggle with that. But at a young age, I was like, I hated failure. I hated mistakes. And then Chef Wagner, I used to spend so much time in the dean's office. I mean, I'm sure you remember, I was always, and Chef Wagner one time was like, the mistakes you make are the best lessons in your life, the best teachers. Embrace them. And that was like the first time I was like, yeah, all right, I'm going to make mistakes, and this is going to be my path to getting better, is to make the mistakes and to accept them, and then to learn from them. And that's the key to me, is, you can't be stagnant. You can't just not learn that lesson. So the review was the review. It was great. I loved it. It pushed me through. It kept going. Then and then I started competing, and then it was like, you get, literally just under a microscope. They're looking at everything you do, and they're trying to, break it apart and see the pieces of everything. And it's criticism. You got to take it. It doesn't get easier. Yeah. It gets worse. The criticism gets harder, and so. Yeah,
you got paying customers out there criticizing you, right?
Right. Yeah. Or worse, people who have been doing this longer than you've been alive, people who have missed the birth of their children, people who have had their business at risk, and you just come in, some young punk from culinary school, and you can't jeopardize that. And you're like, oh, I'm going to learn. They're going to love me. And then they're like, get out of my way. And you're like, what? And then you got to deal with the rejection of that. And that's important.
Yeah. So you're on campus, you had your classes. Looking over your 2-year program, what was your favorite class and why? Which one did you really, this was it? Or did you have a favorite?
Oh, man. Are you kidding me? Okay, the first 2 years were great, and it was cool because it was like the building blocks of understanding, getting the fundamentals down. And then the next 2 years was great because then it's like you're kind of like weaning through the classes, where you got to keep going, and further the education, which is great. Meat cutting class was, I actually I spent a year, was it last year or the year before that, I spent a year in Florida in a butcher shop, and meat cutting class was great, but it wasn't long enough. Mm-hmm. And then it's like you're exposed to so much information and so many, and then you have the meat buyer's guide. It's now I wish I had my copy of the book now. Back then I was so overwhelmed by it, I never opened it. I was like, how do the pieces and So, but yeah, meat cutting was definitely up there with one of my favorite classes.
Yeah, the knowledge is like feeding through a fire hose because it's, it's so short because they're trying to cram everything in those 2 years that sometimes it's overwhelming. And then later on, when you have time for, perspective and reflect on it, you say, now I know why that was important.
Yeah, it was great. And then, because of that experience, those couple days, I got a job in a meat department at a small grocery store in my hometown. And I got to see subprimals, and I got to see these bigger pieces again, things that I had seen in school, but I never got to play with because we were on a track here. So played with that, and then I just slaughtered 2 pigs recently. I live in like heaven here, like as far as rural goes. The produce here is amazing.
Tell the listeners where you are. You're Virginia?
I'm living in Virginia. I'm actually living in Blacksburg, Christiansburg, right next to the Virginia Tech, actually.
Okay.
And Radford University. And a lot of like their departments, their agriculture departments, their food science department is amazing. But yeah, so the cows here, we went through a local farm, Griffin Farms, best cow I've ever had in my life. And I've been fortunate enough to travel and see things and have different things, and like to be like, wow, the best beef I've ever had is in my backyard. Same with the pigs. Got to break down 2 pigs. That was my first time doing whole animal butchery, but because of all of my experiences, it was like I was glued to the table. I couldn't. It was amazing. It was great, and that was because and so I have this weird thing. I'm like, did I want more time in the meat cutting lab, or was it just enough?
Interesting.
To plant something that was like, I didn't get enough of that. I need that more. I think there should be an advanced meat cutting class, get into way more structure, more time. And, you gotta love the animal. And that's the thing. You gotta love the animal. You can't rush it. It's like, it's given its life for us. It's we have to honor that. Even in restaurants, you got to remember the food that you're serving.
Well, it sounds like it's great with all the farm. You're killing the cows, you're killing the chickens, you're killing the pigs, you're picking the berries. It's like right there, back to the earth.
I have a blackberry bush in my yard. I have a black cherry tree, a wild cherry tree. I have dandelions galore. I made a dandelion jam recently. And then I have like all this, free time to do what I want. And so it's like I make terrines, and I make, I just bought some meat glue the other day, and I meat glued a piece of pork loin to show everyone, And
Was culinary school what you imagined? Is there anything you wish you knew when you got there that you didn't know, or now that you've gotten out, you look back on it saying, I wish something?
I remember, when I went, I was like, I'm not ready to go to culinary school. I'm not, I've studied 4 years. I've read textbook. I could tell you Fat Tom and all this. And I was like, okay, I think I'm ready to do this. Okay. Get there. And you're like, and I kind of had to be like, wait a minute. I'm not supposed to know everything. I'm not supposed to come in with experience and knowledge. I'm going to school for this, So then it was once school started, the clock started, then it was like, okay, let's learn, absorb, and push. And I wish I knew, honestly, like how tough the industry is and the people that get into this industry. I'm a fragile dude. I went into the industry a fragile dude. You gotta deal with, when you're going into something like this, or into the real world, you got to understand that there's going to be a point when real life knocks on your door, and it's rough and it's difficult, and and so you're sitting here trying to learn how to be a cook, and you got real life and bills, and I think learning how to juggle real life would be great. I think especially also, I wish I had more insight on mental health. I wish I knew a lot more about taking care of myself mentally, physically, emotionally, because you really have to be ready to run a marathon in this career. There's no sprint. If you sprint, actually not, it's like a sprinting marathon. You got to be ready to sprint for a very long distance. And so I think that's one thing I wish I knew, was how to, really be happy and balance my life and be, food's my passion and it's my career, so I kind of like, when people say something about balance, I'm like, I like, so but balance, yeah, definitely would be something I would say. Having an understanding, knowing it's going to be tough. It's going to be hard, and you're going to trip and fall, and you're going to burn yourself. And
do you think the school does a good job portraying the industry? Do you think it's too soft, too hard? Do you think it's just right?
No, I had a few chefs who through the course of my schooling, I was like, okay, they're they really know the tougher side of the industry. You know, every chef that taught there obviously had their merits, they had their good things, their businesses, whatever they did, and I don't discredit that. But there were a few people there where you're like, wow, you were really in it, you know. And on the back, on the more structured, more disciplined side, Chef Kochi, you know, Chef Lacastra, Chef Brandenburg, Chef Rook, all of these guys, and I'm sorry, Chef Houghton, all of these guys. I don't want to leave anyone out. You know, I'll be getting emails like, oh, come on, bro. But, you know, they all had so many great things to offer. But what was unrealistic was that, and maybe it's important because we were young, but it's very, I always was like, why aren't we more disciplined? Why aren't we getting why is more structure? I was like, because this isn't going to be how it is in a real kitchen, right? You know, and then you slowly got my first kitchen job, and I was like, oh, okay, gotcha. There's a big difference between the labs and and people used to tell me at Johnson & Wales, oh, you're going to go far, you're going to be great, you're a natural, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, okay. And then you get into a real kitchen with people who are way better than you or way more experienced than you, and you're just like, was that all a lie? Am I not that good? I thought I was. People seemed to be cheering me on, and now I'm being bullied. Now I'm not liked. Now I have my own, but you have to deal with your own personal issues. You can't, I used to get to work at New York. I'd get to work, I'd take a deep breath, and I'd say everything that is going on out of these doors stays outside of these doors at this moment. As soon as I open this door, it's about everything inside that building. And that's what I had to do to kind of just remind myself that I couldn't be upset that I had to pay rent, or that, whatever I was dealing with, but it was like, it is what it is. You gotta learn how to turn things off and leave things that, you can't be mean to your spouse because you had a bad day because your intern or your coworker, your chef was rude to you or pissed you off somehow or whatever, you can't complain to your service, whoever's on your station with you, about your wife or your ex or your dog or your car or anything like this, because that's taken away from the moment. You're losing that focus, but you're still human. You still got to be able to sit down for family meal and laugh and be like, life's life, but it's hard. You just got to balance though. You have to start somewhere. So I've become a lot less critical. You got to start somewhere. And so I think I've wrestled with the idea. People have asked, do you believe in culinary school going first? I've worked with people who have, and I've worked with people who haven't. Look, you're only as good as much as you practice. So it doesn't really matter. I think culinary school is great for some people. For most people, it's a great way to get into the industry, to start moving, but also it puts you in debt. And if you're going to be a cook living an authentic cook's experience, you're going to be broke. And you're going to be paying bills for a long time. And that's just the fact of the matter. I get it. It's life. There are people who are like, nope, I never went to culinary school. I dove right into a restaurant. I made all the silly mistakes, so what are you willing to take and give? Because there's pros and cons to both.
There's going to be a payment one way or another, right? Apprentice ways, or are you going to do it for dollars financially?
Exactly.
Now, tell us about when you were in school, because you were participating in a lot of extracurricular type stuff. You did some competitions. Tell us about your study abroad, all these other things outside of the curriculum proper or the degree part of it, the other things that come with the culinary school.
See, that was the thing, was when I got to culinary school, it was the moment where I knew everything was starting and I couldn't stop. I volunteered, but I volunteered as much as I could, but I was selective with what I volunteered with. I got to help the competition team. Who was it that used to come through? The Culinary Olympic team came through one time, and I got to do their dishes. And I stayed into the labs until 1 a.m. That was the first time I've ever seen a chef perfectly julienne or brunoise a carrot without looking, but faster than anyone I've ever seen, and they were perfect. And I remember, and that was my introduction to kind of more modern techniques, a little more creative plating styles, having fun with the food, playing with the food, kind of more of food as an art, as well as just, I used to get yelled at. They're like, just focus on the fundamentals. Let's, learn the fundamentals. And I was always like, yeah, but what if I made carrot pastrami? And they're like, can you cook an egg? I'm like, yeah, I can cook an egg. I'm going to learn to cook an egg. I'm mastering the egg, but I'm daydreaming over here.
I got to skip some steps. I'm in a hurry.
Yeah, exactly. But still, though, but again, though, I had a huge respect for fundamentals. I still do, even more so, especially after working in more restaurants. It's all fun and games to look at food and be like, oh, that's creative and that's artistic. But, if you don't have the fundamentals, I mean, you can go on any social media platform and see somebody and look at a dish and be like, okay, that has no integrity in the dish. They looked and said, how many colors can I put on a plate? And it's like, hey, but you know what? Hey, that's cool. You know what they did that I didn't do? They plated a plate with as many colors as they could think of. I didn't, they did. So, respect. That's one thing I'm working on, being less critical. It's super easy to just be like, what a nerd, but then.
So tell us about your study abroad. You went to Germany?
I did. Yeah.
How was that?
Amazing. It was, I was just talking to someone the other day. They said, why is it that our most treacherous, hardest moments in life seem to be like our best? Even though you're suffering intensely in the moment, you kind of look back later on and go, well, that was the best moment of my life. Germany was one of the coolest experiences I've ever got to be a part of. I went there with my best friend we went to high school together, went to Germany together. I got to, I worked for a chef family who worked for Michel Bras in France, which was a name I was becoming familiar with, but I didn't know. I don't think I even knew that they were old chefs of his before until I got there, and I was like, what? Michel Bras, that guy's amazing. The food was totally different than anything I'd ever experienced. It was my first time in a fine dining kitchen. It was my first time in a European kitchen. I mean, the communication alone, there was one guy that spoke like 7 languages. He was our in-between. He spoke Russian, English, French. I mean, this guy he was cool. Then we had a wine intern who was awesome. He was a really cool dude. Tobias, the cook there, he was really cool. Fabrice was the wine guy. I mean, it was just like, and then Julian, the all language communicator. These guys were so cool and so unique, and they were so welcoming of us, and we didn't know their culture very well. They didn't know, they know what they know. We knew what we knew. And it was a super, it was super humbling too, because you spend like all this time in school doing all this work and trying and learning these skills. And then they come in with cases of rosemary and they go, all right, we're going to have to pick all of this. And by we, I mean you. And it's like, you're like, oh, okay, cool. This sucks, but it's such an important lesson because, and teamwork and speed and efficiency, organization. We went foraging. The chef there had a truffle dog. Oh. I actually have some of his books. I'll have to show you sometime. That was our parting gift. They signed some books for us. They had their own books. But I learned so much about food, and that was, I think, the beginning of me looking at food and really respecting the planet, understanding food. And ever since my internship, I've always been a ground watcher, but now I'm like, I scan for edible food all the time. Like, I got wild strawberries in my backyard. They're unedible, but I got oxalis and stuff. And I'm always like looking around, trying to see what I can eat. But, obviously we always preface, you want to make sure you can identify it before you eat it. But yeah.
So when you were in that kitchen, you had people from all over the world, trained differently.
Totally different.
Did it all work? Was it like, did it all work like an orchestra in the kitchen? Was it like, no, there was friction, problems?
It was a really small group of people. We had a Russian intern. We were the 2 American interns. We had 2 French girls that were interning. They were front of the house, but they were also kitchen as well, I actually talked to one of them still today. We had, I don't know, maybe 7 people. We had 2 dishwashers, I think, which then we ended up helping with as well a lot, which was, important too. I didn't understand that I remember being like, well, why am I washing dishes? I came here to cook, and then you leave after you make yourself look like a complete ass. And you think, why am I not in front of the burners? And then you understand you learn the real lesson about teamwork and making it happen. And so, yeah, so that was an important place. Really great. It worked. We all had our own personalities. There was also, and the thing about it was they had their own lives before we came, so they had their drama and their own stories, and we didn't really speak the language. So, we got minute details about things, but yeah, there was definitely, tension at times in the kitchen. Of course. I mean, even though there was a small kitchen, it was a family though. It was like super, like we woke up every morning. We went downstairs for breakfast. The chef's wife would make us coffee. We always had meat and cheeses and stale French bread from the day before, which was, that was when I learned how to, like, that changed the way I ate personally. Like, I went there for family meal. Oh yeah. So we would have breakfast in the morning, we'd have lunch, and then we'd have dinner. We all sat down 3 times a day. We sat down and we had dinner or lunch or breakfast, and we talked. And of course there was a language barrier there, but if you start to learn the language, and really pick up what's going on in the vibes, it was a great experience. It was rough. Don't get me wrong. It had ups and downs, but it was gorgeous. It's a great country. Great. Germany is, I'll be back, man. I want to visit. I want to hang out in Germany. I loved it. Cologne was amazing. Cologne was Cologne, yeah, it was so cool. And it was kind of in a farmland, and like the wine country out there and everything. It was just phenomenal. It was a great experience. And
that probably gave you the travel bug, because after graduation, you traveled around, right? Where was your first stop? Seattle?
Seattle, yeah. Seattle was my first stop. My buddy who went to Germany with me, he got a job at a really good restaurant in Seattle, Canlis restaurant. They are a phenomenal family. That the restaurant has been around for like 60 plus years. The stories that I heard there, the way they conduct themselves, there was, it had its ups and downs too, but man, Seattle is an amazing city. This family is out there doing a great job, really introducing fine dining, not changing fine dining, being part of fine dining, but changing it in the way like they really care about mental health. They really care about their workers. When I was there, they installed like $1 million renovation on the kitchen for the air conditioning, because they wanted us to be comfortable, because they had the time and the money to put back into us. And it was just an amazing time. I grew up in that. I feel like I had to grow up quickly after that kitchen, because I was like, wow, these people are amazing. And then even now today, Mark and Brian Canlis are absolutely crushing it in the food scene right now. I know after the pandemic, they turned into like a delivery and pick up, like a little drive through, and they're great. And everyone in the town knows them. Some people like them, some people don't. Some people think, like they're better. This is a little bit of a competition, but at the end of the day, they're a really great crew. And that was an awesome experience. Again, I got into foraging there because it's Seattle.
Right.
But blackberry bushes taller than you walking down the street, wild blackberries, and just all this amazing food. Mushrooms are huge there. Ramps are crazy over there. Fiddlehead ferns, like the Pacific Northwest. You're an hour away from the mountain farmlands, and you're 20 minutes away from downtown Seattle. It's a great place, awesome place.
How long did you stay there, and then where did you go next?
I was there for 2 years. Yeah, about 2 years, and then I ended up moving to New York with my then wife, which is a weird. That's a whole subplot there. But so yeah, we moved to New York, and we got a small room in Bushwick. I don't know if you're familiar with Brooklyn at all. Bushwick is it's a slowly gentrifying neighborhood. Stayed in Bushwick for a couple months. After that, we were like, okay, we need to get an apartment. We got an apartment in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, which Bedford-Stuyvesant, which is a classic. These guys are like, the names are just, their history. There's so much history. But so that was really cool. Lived in Brooklyn for a while. Worked at a French bistro in Greenpoint, Sauvage. It was cool. I worked under a chef named Damon Wise. I don't know if you know the name. He was an old excuse me if I mess this up, Damon. If you ever hear this, I doubt it, but he was a cool dude, man. This guy was awesome. He trained David Chang. He was the executive corporate chef for Tom Colicchio, I think, way back in the day. And this guy, man, he was like on the line. He was like Darth Vader on the line. He was like, he moved with such force, he was elegant, but he was strong, this dude. And like, man, the food that we put out there was really awesome, really interesting, yummy food.
And your wife, you met her in Seattle?
No, I met her at actually Johnson and Wales.
Oh.
I was going to leave that part out. I figured but yeah, we met in college, and we traveled to Seattle and conquered Seattle for a little bit, and then moved to New York together.
Then parted and went your own ways.
We parted in New York sometime after. I think it was after I helped open Robichon, which was just an absolute dream, which was crazy. But it was hard work, and shortly after that we split up. So you know how it goes.
Yeah. Tell us about the industry. What is it? Is it hard? Is it bad? I mean, we've had people say that, it can be brutal, it can be sexist, it can be discriminatory, it can be good, it can be bad. Tell us your perspective as you went through all these different restaurants. How was it? What do you see?
Like any industry, there's always going to be like the challenges. There's always going to be the ups and the downs. The thing about the culinary industry is that we cook food. Right? We're not doctors. We're not scientists. Well, kind of, we want to be, right? And we really care, but we really care about what we're doing. And sometimes we put a lot of pressure on ourselves, a lot of pressure, to make money, save money, be creative, be the next best thing, hold your standards, Yelp reviews, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. It's like so overwhelming. But at the end of the day, we're cooking food, right? We're not building rockets to go to the moon.
Yeah.
We're making food. The most important thing is that we love what we're doing. We're really loving the food. We have each other's backs. We're working together. But it is a tough industry. It's competitive. People want to be, it attracts egos. It attracts maybe people who can't get jobs in other industries due to other reasons, but also that doesn't matter though, because sometimes those people end up being your best friends, or the people that you can trust. And they have your back, and it doesn't matter because they have a felony for drug possession. Who cares? Because when that guy is right next to me and he's helping me and I'm helping him and we're getting through service, we're all the same. We're all there to make that food happen. And it's not easy. I've had lots of struggles with people. You always do. They're humans. I'm human. I've made mistakes. I think the best thing is to just learn from experiences and really grow from. And but yeah, it is difficult, but it's always changing. It always has changed. That's the best part about the industry. It's about the best part about the world. Things are always growing and evolving and changing. What worked 20 years ago doesn't work today, and if it does, we still use it. We take when Charlie Trotter was doing stuff, it was like Charlie Trotter was putting food out that was super interesting, and he purees and different foams and stuff. He was kind of like, well, how can we play with what we know? Yeah, so it's always expanding, always growing. The standards have changed. It's kind of cyclical, like everything. It's kind of cyclical. One day health food's in, one day butter's in. You never know. But
do you see any bullying or anything going on in the kitchen that was on the bad side of it? I always think of Kitchen Confidential. You talked about mental health. Have you seen substance abuse? I mean, are these rumors? Are these real? What do you think?
Actually, it's funny that you bring up Kitchen Confidential. Did you know today's the 2-year anniversary of Anthony Bourdain passing?
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So a little shout out to Chef there.
Yeah. Rip. R.I.P.
Yeah. That guy's cool. That guy it's so funny. I always wanted to respect him as a chef, reading his books. And I was like, he just ran every restaurant into the ground. But then you saw him like traveling and his love for food. And it was like, it didn't even matter. He was showcasing some of the bad parts of the industry, the difficulties. So my respect for him changed a lot over the years. But man, that dude was cool. He was a good guy. You see some really bad things happen to some really good people, and we've all been there. We all have our ups and downs, and it's really not so much I think we all want to change our industry, right? Because it's what we are in, it's what we're a part of. But it's not about the industry; it's about the world. It's about our country. It's about our state, our cities that we live in. Like I've never been a really political person. I don't really like it because it makes me uncomfortable, the fact that people get divided so quickly because of it. And I just think we have to take care of ourselves and each other. We got one planet. We got one life, and it's unfortunate that these things happen and we don't learn from them, and they happen again and again and again. But, things are changing. So slowly but surely.
What is one myth about the profession or culinary school or the industry or kitchens that you want to debunk?
A myth about the industry
that people believe, but you're like, no, that's not the way it is. That's not true.
It's like we're in like the age of social media, though. Is there anything secret anymore? Is there any more myths? I don't know. I think that's it's also the kind of the point of all of the change that we're making in the world and the industry and taking care of ourselves and each other better. I mean, it's like you used to, I don't know. Here's a myth. People don't throw pots and pans like they used to. That's not like that's changing. But you still get bullying. I mean, I've experienced it, sometimes physical, sometimes it's mental, it's emotional. Sometimes you're the target, and they will, the thing is if you don't belong in the kitchen for whatever reason, they'll send antibodies out and they'll try to get you out of there. And sometimes it's just because you don't belong. You don't click, you don't mesh. Doesn't work. You have a different thing. You have a different style. They have a different way. You just don't fit in. Or you're young and innocent, or you have anxiety. And so they see through that, and they can get to you, and they want you out of there because they don't want any of that, because they're scared. They're intimidated. They're angry. But that falls on HR. That falls on the chef. Training people to love each other and to care about what we're doing just as much as, but it's a work. But as far as myths go, I don't know. Not all chefs are drug addicts. I don't know. Most of them, but just kidding.
Who are 3 people who have been the most influential to you? Could be professionally, could be personally, it could be alive, they could have passed on. 3 people, your life career, that have been most influential.
Thomas Keller was a huge inspiration to me coming into culinary school, right? Everyone wanted the French Laundry Cookbook. Everybody wanted to understand that level of finesse. And so he was a big inspiration. I got to meet him once. Cool dude. He's tall. Yeah, so I met him in New York. He just kind of walked into our kitchen, and I was just like, oh, God, there he is. Like, I know who that is, Eric Repair is another one. Eric Repair is a really awesome dude. Great chef, and then, I don't know, like, my family's always been a huge inspiration for me, my friends, my family, like those are the people that I find inspiration from. Those are people that make me want to keep pushing, keep doing what I do.
You mentioned books a couple of times. What's some books that you would recommend to someone new and wanting to go to culinary school, just get into this industry? And, what have you read or, recently that's inspired you?
I'm sitting right in front of my bookshelf here. Hold on, let me turn around. Let me find something. So I have a couple that I always reach for. Alain Ducasse's book. This is one of the best books. It's French. Great book of cooking. This book is like the encyclopedia for cooking. There's every kind of recipe. On Food and Cooking by Harold McGee. That's another big one. I have a lot of hours put into that one there. It's really great for understanding the science of cooking and understanding why things happen and what's going on. It kind of goes into a little bit more of the food science, which is important to know. You want to know why things are happening. Probably, I have a couple other books. I have some Robichon books that are huge that I love to read. I think they're great for people who are coming into the industry and want to learn the classic history of what we're doing and why we do it. People always make fun of me because I always say French books because that's, but those books are really important. The Flavor Bible, that was a big one when I was at Johnson & Wales. I don't know if I'm sure it is floating around. Everyone wanted the Flavor Bible. It's a great book. But I challenge people when they look at it, instead of using the inspiration that they're saying, don't just use what they're saying. Use that as a reason to think about food further. If there's a flavor profile like it says, tomato, basil, mozzarella, classic combo. It's like, well, play with that a little bit. Have fun with that and take that idea, but let's understand why the tomato and the basil and the cheese go together well, and let's play with that, have fun with it. So I mean, it's a good book, but you don't want to get caught, just taking those combos. Great book though. Great place to start. That's all I can think of right now at the moment.
What do you think is the future of culinary school?
I think culinary school is, it is what it is. It's going to grow. It's going to change. They're going to add and subtract. They're going to grow with the trends. They're going to teach things as things happen. I mean, the thing about culinary school is it's a school, right? So the job is for them to teach. It is them for this. They should be recording history and then, spreading that forward and telling people why things happened the way they did, and about who's important and what happened and when things were invented and created and how we're going and how we need to save the planet and, be there for each other. I think it's going to change and grow just like everything else.
Would you do it all again now that looking at it from a perspective of where you're at, the cost, the time, everything? Would you change anything?
Absolutely. Because I would totally do it again, because culinary school was that was when I was able to be like, oh, well, if I can play with this, bunch of food and practice, and I literally go to school for this. I can spend time doing extracurricular things, seeing things, helping other chefs, doing dinners, and I absolutely would 100% do it again. I mean, I would probably think a little bit more about the financial side of it, try to do a little bit better job keeping up with that. Maybe having a good, save up, get scholarships. That would be my biggest advice. Just you want to end out with as little, debt as possible, which is hard, but.
So what's next for you? You've traveled, you've worked for a lot of places. Where are you? What is your next plans? Where do you see yourself 5 years, 10 years? What's going on?
So I've never actually had a sous chef position, right? I've never gotten there, in all of my years. Yeah, I'm still like, I remember in culinary school, I was like, if I'm 27 now, I was like, if I'm not a chef in a restaurant by 27, if I'm not running the restaurant, I've failed. I have let myself down, talking about unrealistic, now I'm 27 and I'm like, it is what it is. You'll get there when you get there.
And people put, pressure on themselves sometimes that just drives them in the wrong direction, and they're not, just relaxing and being happy and enjoying life and trying to make a living. And
I've never had that self-confidence. I have been battling my own demons for so long that it was hard to be like, at work, I can be a confident grown-up. I still feel like a anxious mess sometimes, and so it's a lot about trying to understand that, using that energy in a good way and stuff like that. I don't think I was mature enough to be a sous chef. I don't think I was ready to lead, even as a sous chef, But even now, I talked about not wanting to fail. I'm still. I mean, it's a hard thing to overcome, because in your mind, when someone doesn't like you, or somebody despises you or doesn't want to work with you anymore, that rejection hurts. That's hard to understand. But then you have to understand, this is real life. Life is not easy. People are rough. People are mean. So it's kind of like that, understanding that balance of like, just keep going and keep pushing.
Yeah.
Man, I have dreams. I have things I want to do, but you never really know how life is going to go. I'd love to start a business. I'd love to, I'm at a point now where I'm like, I'd love to start something small, something with lower risk. I'm in a pretty great town here. It's a little bit it's a college town. But it's still pretty rural. The food here is amazing as far as the produce and stuff. And, I think it'd be a great place to, be like, hey, college students, here's a small owned business here that, is food related, and, you may really enjoy it. And if it fails, it fails. It's a smaller town. I got less, I'm not trying to open up a sandwich shop in New York City, So, I'm working on gardening. I'd like to get a little bit better at that. I would love to start some sort of YouTube channel, podcast, food photography, plating. I've been like trying to work on some sort of a book for a while, trying to get some sort of like a handbook, guide, encyclopedia, but it's life work. It's not something I'm going to publish in a year or 10, it's something I'm going to work on until, I retire, and then some. You
think you'll stay in that area, Virginia?
I have no idea, man. I've traveled all over the place. I'm in Florida. I'm in Seattle. I'm in New York. I'm in Virginia. I don't know. I'd really love to check out Arizona, California. I might even go to Europe for a while. I'd love to do that. I'd love to go back over there and just, my German's getting a little better. I can understand it. I can't speak it. But, so I don't know. I'm amenable.
Yeah. So what advice would you give someone wanting to pursue a career in this industry or wanted to go to culinary school? And they came to you and they said, hey, what should I know? What advice would you pass on to them?
One of the things, focus on yourself, work on yourself, ignore the white noise, but stay relevant, know what's going on, see what people are doing, observe, learn to watch while you work. A lot of times getting ahead in a restaurant is learning a station before you're even on it, right? Learning how to do a job before you're even taught. You got to see it from a distance and learn it. And then when it's your turn to step up, you kind of have an idea. You're kind of comfortable with what you're doing. Be observant, listen, stay humble, take compliments well, but take criticism well. And about a lot of working in restaurants and working with people in general is understanding conflict resolution, understanding how to stand up for yourself in the proper way, how to communicate with somebody, how to, standing up for yourself is not a bad thing. Sometimes it's a good thing. It's healthy. It's important. Without conflict, do you grow? No, you don't. So, you got to learn to stay cool, calm, and collected, and humble, and keep learning. And it's kind of like you want to learn the environment quick. You want to understand. You want to know who's in charge. You want to know who's disliked. You got to be careful, because if there's an enemy of the state in the kitchen and you don't want to be friends with that guy, you want to be careful, because it's and it's terrible, but not all restaurants are like that, so I can only say, sometimes you fall into a place and it's like a dream job and you work with people who are just absolutely 100% the coolest human beings. Sometimes you get, the latter, but it's okay.
Is there a question I should have asked, but I didn't? Is there anything I should have asked, if you were in my shoes, that you would have asked yourself?
I mean, dude, I could talk for hours. I could talk forever about this industry and what we do and, what's going on. It's just, I think you hit everything pretty on point. How
about some stories about the school from outside? Like you lived in the dorms. Is there anything, talk about what goes on in the dorm? What talk about fraternity? Talk about the food. Talk about, I don't know, anything from that may help a listener?
Yeah, of course. It was awesome. It's funny. I was an RA for most of my time. So RA, SA, I did what I could. That was an amazing experience too, because you really learned, you're like, oh, I'm a hall monitor, I'm going to enforce the rules. And then by the end of it, you're like, just be quiet, please. So, so that was a really valuable lesson there too. It was great though. You'd go into the public rooms and, you'd play pool and watch TV, go into the kitchens, and you'd meet people that were in your class, and everyone would be practicing or cooking or something, hanging out. It was a great experience. People there were really awesome. And there's always ups and downs. There's always goods and bads, but you learn to live with people. You learn to interact with people and have neighbors and share space. It's invaluable. Understanding how to coexist with another human being at any level is great. And Johnson & Wales really, they did a good job, as far as that goes. The Res Life department was amazing. There was plenty of activities. School was always, really kept up. And yeah, you're always going to complain about the cafeteria, but it's good food. It feeds you. You're in college. Get over it.
Did you ever see any injuries, accidents in the labs or wherever? The typical story of people always cut themselves.
Yeah, I was actually in my fundamentals class. I was there was a girl. She was doing something with veal, I think, and she was hammering it and using the mallet to really flatten it out. And I was trying to cut something, and we were on the same table, and my knife slipped, and I cut my finger. And I was like, okay, so this is my first cut in a lab. All right, not too bad. You'd have the kids who come hungover, the kids who weren't taking it too serious, and they get sick in the middle of class and have to leave. And, you'd have people, there's always the little burns and stuff. That was always, I think that was popular, was the fingertip burns. Everyone's learning that everything's hot, you got to learn that, quite quickly. So, yeah,
that's first, we get that first day getting the knife kit.
Yeah.
They run their finger down the blades. No, don't do that.
Oh, yeah, great.
Sharp.
Yeah. Oh, knife sharp. Good.
Okay, well, as we come to the end of our chat today, before we wrap up, any last minute advice or guidance you want to leave with the listeners? Something you want to share?
Yeah. Find something that makes you happy. keep doing it. And if it's, if you have to find a hobby outside of work, some people have to have two hobbies, right? But just so happens my hobby is food. I love everything about food, but it's also my job. But that's two different things. Food at home and cooking in a restaurant, is totally different. Find things that make you happy, keep your sanity, work on yourself, stay healthy. It's quite easy to get bad habits in any industry, in any parts of life, but especially this one. It's easy to start smoking or do drugs and drinking. Everyone goes through it, but it's really not worth it. And but that's a personal choice. You got to figure that out on your own. But keep pushing though. It's not easy, but it's fun and it's so rewarding. I don't think I've ever worked a day in my life, actually, like actual work. I get paid to study. I get paid to get better at what I do. I'm not going to complain about that.
Pretty good.
Yeah, enjoy it.
Cool. Well, that is just about all the time we have for this episode. And I want to first thank you, Joseph, for coming on the show today and sharing your culinary school story with all of us. We really appreciate your time, your insight, and your honesty.
Absolutely. It was my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I love that you're doing this. I think it's great. I think that podcasts and videos and spreading knowledge is the most important part about what we do and how we grow as humans. And I think it's really awesome. I think what you're doing is great. And I really appreciate you. Thanks for having me on today.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. And I really enjoyed our chat.
Cool. Absolutely. Thank you, man.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.
And a big thanks and appreciation also goes out to all of you, the listeners. We hope you enjoy the show and this episode. You all are a big part of this show, so please let us know what you think. Your comments are always welcome, and they help us in making the best show possible. You can email them to culinaryschoolstories@gmail.com. That's culinaryschoolstories@gmail.com, or even leave us a voicemail at area code 207-835-1275. That's area code 207-835-1275. And if you like the show, we have a big ask of all of you, and that is to share the podcast with everyone you know and to give us a positive rating and review on Apple Podcasts. Okay, until our next Culinary School Story, take care and be well. Bye-bye. Culinary School Stories is a proud member of the Food Media Network.